Welcome to episode 100 of the Sports Geek Podcast. This week, a double episode. This episode 100 with Charlie Shin from Major League Soccer.
Welcome to the Sports Geek Podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals.
And now, here's your host who's reached 100 Sports Geek podcasts, Sean Callanan.
Thank you very much, DJ Joel. You are listening to the Sports Geek Podcast. This is episode 100, but if you are listening for the very first time, thank you very much for listening, either on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Pocket Cast, my favourite podcasting app. My name is Sean Callanan from sportsgeekhq.com, and I'm the host of the Sports Geek Podcast, and this is episode 100. So I'm going to try something a little bit different for this week. I'm going to release a double episode. I do realise that this is episode 100 and the next one is episode 101. So if you want to complain, you complain. But as I will quote Will Anderson, favourite comedian of mine, it's a free podcast. So you really shouldn't complain too much. Thank you very much for everyone who has been listening since starting the podcast. This is episode 100. And really glad to have Charlie Shin from Major League Soccer on the podcast. Been chasing Charlie for a little while to talk about data and CRM and his role at MLS. He is a big part of the SEEK conference where he helps curate the CRM track. So I was very, very happy to catch up with him post-seat. And after that, we'll have a little bit of a recap of 100 episodes. But first, here is my chat with Charlie Shin from Major League Soccer. Very happy to welcome Charlie Shin, Senior Director, Strategic Planning at Major League Soccer. Welcome to the Sports Geek Podcast. Thanks
for having me, Sean. It's great to be on your podcast.
Oh, exactly. I didn't want to have to push out the hashtag Where's Charlie to finally get you on the podcast. For those of you who are at seat 2014, they'll know why that hashtag was there when Christine, and it's one of the pro tips that I give any speaker. If you're going to put a shout out to the audience, make sure the person is in the audience. And you got a great shout out in front of I think 700 odd people, and we couldn't find you in the room, but that's all right. That's all right. I made sure you were there this year when I gave you a shout out.
And I made sure that I had my chargers with me, so I didn't have to go back up to my room.
It is a constant problem with conferences like SEEK because you're out there pumping out information and tweeting and writing notes, and devices just end up going, don't they?
Exactly.
So I want to have a bit of a background. You've been with Major League Soccer since 2006. Do you want to take us a little bit of a history story about your background story with Major League Soccer and how you've got to the role you're in now?
Sure. So prior to joining Major League Soccer, I was a business consultant working for PwC Consulting as well as IBM Business Consulting Service. So I've been a business consultant for about 6 years. And, I got to a point where I've done quite a bit of projects, and it was getting a little bit of repetitive and wanted to kind of go back into the industry. That's when I've kind of decided, sports was an area that I had passions for, and I also felt there was a huge opportunity in future as a business. So I decided to go back. Went to school since I didn't have any kind of sports background. Went to sports management program in NYU to get my master's degree and kind of used that as a stepping stone. And while I was in school, I had an opportunity to come across with an appointment at MLS, and opportunity came along, and that kind of led to one thing, and then actually started interning at MLS for about 7-8 months during my school years, and that gave me an opportunity to come on board as a full-time within their marketing department. Since then, I've been the marketing manager and kind of oversaw a lot of their media advertisements, and use that as an opportunity to start build out a CRM plan, because back then in 2006, there really wasn't any kind of infrastructure or even a thought of what CRM was or how that needs to be implemented at the league. So, having been a consultant in the area of CRM, it thought that was an opportunity, and it kind of was my side project. And it took me a while, but I was able to convince the executive group, and then eventually be able to get a funding from the board and start the project. And then ever since, it's been a long journey.
So very much so, and I love that story because you've effectively said, in 2006, you've come in as a CRM guy, as a data geek, understands how business have used data, and you've seen the massive opportunity, but it was a slow process to get management across to say, this is the data that's available to us, and this is what we can do if we get these systems and processes in place. And then you really do need that champion for the cause, and you're effectively in that and sort of develop that role at MLS?
Yeah, you do, and it wasn't that the executive didn't understand the value. It was more of the life cycle of where Major League Soccer was, and back in 2006, I don't think that was their top priority in terms of making sure the league sustained. Once we got to a phase where we were established with more awareness in the market, and we've had marketing, and then David Beckham came in 2007, and that really gave us an opportunity to kind of think about the future. And I think that's when the leadership group also felt that it was a good time to start looking into building this infrastructure.
Yeah, so you're in that phase where Beckham's come into the league, and you're getting all this buzz, and you get the awareness of MLS is getting higher and higher, but you now have to start understanding those fans and start that process of getting that personalisation with the fans. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you call your fan funnel at MLS?
Sure. It's very similar to a typical customer funnels that you would see in any kind of industries or consumer product business. It's when a customer takes a certain steps that would ultimately lead to the consumption of your product or your brand. So you go through an awareness, and then you have that trial stage, and then someone has certain perception based on that, and then they actually purchase the product, and then they either like it or dislike it, and then they'll come back for more. So we kind of took that approach and created a fan funnel for sports, and kind of really simplified it so that we could come up with the strategy for each of the phases. And basically what we trimmed down to was there's going to be an acquisition phase where we're trying to reach out to new fans. And then there's an engagement. Once you come across these new fans, how do you plan on engaging with them? And then after that engagement, hopefully there's a monetization stage. And then finally, after the monetization stage, there's a loyalty piece where they'll come back for more. So that's the kind of the four simple funnel that we've defined, and we use it as a base CRM strategic framework when we're executing our CRM at the league level.
So it is. I wanted to touch on that because the league level, a lot of the people who are potentially listening are at the club level. How is CRM different from a league point of view? Because you're not in that. You're not in that strong loyalty affinity sort of space, because people don't bleed for the MLS. They bleed for the Timbers or the Galaxy or New York FC, like that. The close ties are with the club. So how does the league approach it differently to what a club might or a team might approach it?
Absolutely. The fans are a fan of the club and not the league. So when we first started this journey, we had to define what is the role of the league within this whole CRM strategy, taking into the clubs into the consideration. And we decided that the best role for the league is to really focus on two of the areas, which is one, provide a infrastructure that will help not only the league but also the clubs to take advantage of the leading technology that exists out there in the industry. So we have built a centralized data warehouse. We have built a centralized data analytic platform. We also have a email service provider that we offer to our clubs. And this was meant to really make it efficient and effective for our league and leverage the scale of economy. So rather than having individual clubs go out and make that investment, we were able to centralize all the technology and then be able to provide it back to our clubs so that they wouldn't have to go and spend money, investment to have access to these type of tools. The second area that we focused on was, once we have this technology in place, in order for the clubs to really maximize their CRM is to have a quality data. And it's not just about the accuracy, but also the types of information that they would have about their customers. If we look at our structure, our MLS is unique in a sense that we're a single entity league, and a lot of the infrastructures are at the league office level. So, we're online. The merchandise is centralized. We have our websites is centralized from an infrastructure standpoint. Where fantasy game is centralized. So a lot of times, all of the non-ticketing engagement data existed at the league level. And contrary, the clubs had access to the ticketing data that the league didn't have access to. So there was a disconnection of understanding how our fans were engaging with our brands, and by having all this consolidated, now we have a holistic view of our customers, not only from a ticketing transaction standpoint, but also understanding how they're engaging on a digital platforms. So now we'll be able to look at someone who's purchased season tickets and whether or not that person is playing fantasy, or that person have downloaded our digital calendar, or if that person is registered in our website. And this will give better understanding the level of engagement beyond just the ticket. So by consolidating all this information and providing it back to our clubs, we're able to provide a robust and comprehensive level of data to our clubs that they could work with, that will provide them better understanding about their fans and help them better come up with the better marketing programs and engagement programs. In addition to that, we do data hygiene and data append at the league level, which again will give us additional over 600 different types of data fields that will get appended to individual customers, again giving more data back to our clubs that they could work with. Those were the two main areas that we felt as a league that we could offset and help our clubs get better at and have access to a better technology. And then at the end of the day, it's really up to the clubs to take this and really take it to the next level. Having this type of infrastructure and data will make it much easier for our clubs to kind of utilize that and go from there.
I mean, you would know from your business consulting background, like that's one of the biggest challenges. I'm going to come up with the word, the overwhelmingness of big data, and going, where do I start? Where do I dive in? But the fact that you've laid out that infrastructure, you effectively, from a club point of view, they can just action the data that's there. They don't have to worry about which tool am I going with, how am I segmenting my database, where do I put this data, how do I clean it, and that kind of thing. That's all there for them, and it's just up to them to action the data that's in front of them.
Yeah, and one area that we did left out was the content management tool solutions, where we felt that was an area where instead of us mandating the technology, that it would be better off for the clubs to determine what would be the best solution based on their level of sophistications and level of resource that they might have, as well as their needs. We felt that was something that the club needed to make the decision on. So although we're providing a data warehousing as well as advanced analytic tool, as well as the emails, any clubs can determine the types of different context management solution that they could use, whether it's Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce or any other solutions that's out in the market.
Okay, very cool. Like, I don't know about the people who are listening, but I'm listening very intently, because every time you start talking about all this data side, because I'm on the digital side, and having data guys and data geeks like yourself really understand, I guess, the opportunities that are in the space, but then how it weaves into everything from a digital point of view, like you working with the guys at MLS Digital and all the content that they're producing, and getting all the facets of how the content's getting consumed, and then bringing it back into this bigger picture of what the fans are doing. That must also fuel those guys on going, this is the type of content we need, this is what's this is what's working from an EDM point of view, this is what's driving traffic. It's very much giving Chris Schlosser and the guys at MLS Digital a lot of direction from this data as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's an evolution, and I use the word journey a lot, because there's so much that could be done through this, and everything that I've just mentioned is really just the tip of the iceberg. And it's funny, because I've spent more than already 5 some odd years in building this CRM infrastructure out, and we're still not even halfway there, because I'm just talking about building out an infrastructure, and how we could apply this goes beyond just using it for emails. And a lot of times when people think about CRM, they equate that into just email marketing, but this goes way beyond that. And right now we're just touching on it might be just on the email side, but eventually this will need to be integrated into overall consumer touch points, whether it's digital, social, in-stadium, other mobile especially, where we need to better leverage the insights that we have, and it's all about how do we customize this so that we're providing the right content at the right time through the right channel to the right folks. So yes, eventually this will have to be something that we work closely with our digital team, which we are, in fact, and try to leverage this data warehouse that we built so that we maximize the usage not only on the email side but also on all of the other digital touch points.
And I think that's the good the great part of being able to catch up with guys like Paul Greenberg and listen to guys like Ray Wang at Seat, is because they described it very much in a similar terms, that for sports we are at the tip of the iceberg. We're at the start. We're at the start of the we're at base camp 1 if it's Everest, as far as the opportunity and what's in front of us when we're looking at other industries, whether it be retail or hospitality or airlines, in what they're doing in the CRM space. You were a massive part in the CRM track for Seat, in helping curate the steering committee there and get everyone around the CRM track. What were some of the key themes for you coming out of Seat in San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you recognize this as well, but I believe Seat is one of the best conference around the digital space, especially around CRM, where we get all of the key stakeholders that manage and oversee the CRM across the sports. And it's not about just having them come and try to get what they need, but it's also a place where they share their issues and their challenges, as well as some of the success stories and failures, which gives a great insights to everyone, and it just makes it better for everybody. So, I give a great credit to Christine for what she has made of the Seat today, and as an MLS, we try to leverage that as much as possible. So we tie into our CRM meetings for our league, where we get all of the key stakeholders that are managing the CRM at the club level to come out and have our own meetings, but also take advantage of it. The things that I've noticed on the Seats and some of the kind of the key takeaways that I've taken is everyone's in a very similar phase. and interest in terms of what they're trying to do. One thing that I've tried to communicate at the seat and during a lot of different sessions was that everyone has their own pace. CRM today was the same CRM 10, 15 years ago when I was dealing this in my consulting years. The importance hasn't changed over time. It's just everyone has a different kind of timing and their own pace. A team, a certain team for a certain league in a certain market shouldn't be worried that they're far behind versus other clubs. It's more about what is it that they need to do and have a timed roadmap in place that will take them step by step, because that's the only way that they're going to improve and get better, rather than trying to chase somebody. Oh, they've done this, so we need to get this done, even if they don't have the bases in place. And that's kind of the approach that we've taken when we first started this process, is that we weren't trying to catch up with other leagues or other clubs. We said, hey, this is what we need. This is what we're going to do over the time. And, it took us quite a bit, but we've gotten to a place where we feel like we've made a lot of progress in building out this infrastructure.
I think that's really important. I think two things. If you're trying to chase someone down, they might not have the same goals or the same fan base that you do, so it's not the right strategy. They're doing something for a particular reason. Even if you're looking in the MLS space and look at a team like the Timbers and the Sounders that are doing a terrific job in filling their stadium, engaging their fans, and then you've got other teams that are still in ticket selling mode and filling a stadium and selling the story. There's different levers to be pulled for those different strategies. So you've really got to have that longer roadmap to say, we've got to do this right for what we're trying to do for our market and for our fans.
Absolutely. It's again, I speak about journey, that this is something where it's a process and it's evolution, and it's not something where even if you set a goal and set a roadmap, it doesn't end there. Then it's about, okay, now we reached the junction. What's the next roadmap? What's the next plan? And how do we take this to the next level?
Yep. I think, you can look at a lot of people. I speak to a lot of teams, and they're like, we've got a data project, and that's their CRM thing, and it is this behemoth. And I love the phrase, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's how you go about it. Apologies to any vegans out there. I don't eat elephant, if you're wondering. It's just a phrase. I want to go quickly back to you. You went to NYU to get your master's, and now you're a professor teaching database modeling and CRM stuff. What's some of the key advice you're giving to students in your professor role?
Sure. During classes, we try to really talk about a lot of the live cases, because this is one of the areas that it's hard to teach off of the books, because a lot of the books that's out there is already old, because the technology and the digital space changes so fast that it's hard for a lot of these people to catch up. And I'm also using Paul's book as one of our textbook. But again, even within that, he mentions that there's so many things that now has changed or evolved. So, I try to teach them a lot of the live cases and some of the live examples that's taking place. But at the same time, try to tell them about the connection between the data, but also on the business. And a lot of times when people think of CRM, they immediately go to technology space and talk about, oh, how can we use this tool, or how can we use this technology? But we also have to understand the technology is just enabler. It's only good as the strategy and the process and the organization that you put out there, and the technology will help them expedite the process or enhance the execution of the strategies, but it's not the strategy in itself. So try to make sure that students understand that the database or the technology or anything that we leverage has to be driven through the strategy, and that will need to dictate what the overall usage of the database represents. And we talk about a lot about the needing to be more customer centric, and how it needs to be about understanding your customers and understanding their journey and getting to the final stage of the point where whether it's an organization or brand wants them to get to. So whether that's purchasing a product or consuming a product or becoming an avid fan of certain sports teams, you have to understand their course of journey that they take, and then be able to come up with the right strategy that will help them with their engagement and move them through those funnels that we've talked about. And speeding that process is what this CRM is all about, having the right infrastructure that's going to help them speed that process.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to the chat I had with Fiona Green when she talked about CRM, and she very much said it's about the strategy. It's not about the tools. It's about knowing what you want. Those journeys, that funnel, where you want your fans to go and how you want to do them. You can do that in Excel. As much as you can do it in Salesforce or SAS or Dynamics, it's not, and that's the thing. I'm a geek. I love my tools. I'm always trying out new tools all the time, and there can be a tendency to get lost in the tool, and you've got to sometimes step back and say, and it might be as simple as on a whiteboard, what does this customer do, and what are the things that we expect them to do. And then you don't get stuck in the pulling and the levers and the tagging and the moving data around. You start to look at it from the customer point of view a little bit.
Yeah, and that's what's so important when people think about deciding what type of application or solution that they want to be using to help their CRM. A lot of times they don't start from the strategy and then try to understand what is the best tool that will help them achieve whatever the objective that results from that strategy. But they just strictly jump in and say, okay, should I go with Dynamic or Salesforce? Well, this is a little bit cheaper. Well, this has a little bit more customization. Tool's a tool. And some tools might help one club in one area. Other clubs might not. Other solution might not. But I don't see any solution that's better than others. It really depends on what's the right solutions for what I need to do and what I need to achieve. Right? If I live on a mountain and I have a lot of off-roads, I'm not going to go purchase a sedan, right? As much as that car is going to give me all the luxury functions and the leather seats and all that stuff, that's not what I need. I need an off-road car because that's where I'm at. So I might have to go buy a Jeep or four-wheel drive. Versus if I live in a city where it's more, roads are more flat and they're more convenient, then I'm going to go with the sedan. Again, it's not comparing whether the Jeep is better than sedan, but it's more about what environment am I in and what's the objective that I'm trying to achieve. That will dictate what type of solution I need to go and buy.
Exactly right. And this is why I'm currently investigating cloning technology, because I don't get to go to enough of the CRM track when I'm at SEAT. I'm in the digital track, and I don't get to have some of these discussions. So thank you very much, Charlie, for coming on the podcast. Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, as well as my Twitter is @CRMinsports. I do have a blog that I try to write as much as possible. I don't get much of a time these days, but crminsports.com is another blog site that I try to use.
Well, I will put links in the show notes, and I'm more than happy if you want to put this podcast up on that site as well, and let people know. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and best of luck for the rest of the MLS season. And I will see you again in SEAT in Las Vegas.
Same here. Thanks for having me, Sean. Appreciate it. All the best.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Charlie Shin. Don't forget, you can send Charlie a tweet. He is at CRM in Sports. Send him a tweet. Tell him you were listening and you tuned in to the Sports Geek Podcast. Episode 100. There'll be links in the show notes to Charlie's website, Charlie on LinkedIn. Simply go to, as you can with every single episode, sportsgeekhq.com/100. Makes it very simple. You can put in any number between 1 and 100 and you will get a podcast for your listening pleasure. So the question of the podcast today, and this is something, if you could go to that website and leave a comment that would be terrific, would be, what is the status of your data project? Everyone has a data project these days, trying to grapple all the data that is coming in. As Charlie talked about, the same position that he was in at the MLS, trying to figure out the data position. So where are you at? And it's very much similar to my conversation with Isabel on episode 99 around digital maturity, around this data maturity. It normally starts off with a data project, understanding your data, defining all your sources, understanding where they're coming from, and then how are you going to start communicating with your fans? How are you going to start to build out that profile of your fans? So, yeah, really interested. As I said in the convo with Charlie, a lot of teams, a lot of organisations have a data project on their agenda. What's the status of yours? Where do you feel like you're at? Even Charlie said just then, it's not a finished product. It's a journey. It's an ongoing thing, and it's ongoing from an improvement point of view. So everyone should be in some sort of data project mode. So I'd like to hear from you either via Twitter. Send me a tweet at Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek, or go onto our Facebook page, facebook.com/sportsgeek, and leave a comment on the post on Charlie's on episode 100. For the end of the episode, Sounds of the Game will be from an old Melbourne Storm game. A bit of a congratulations to the Storm making the prelim final, getting the big win last week, getting the week off, and they will be the only game in town on preliminary final weekend, with both the AFL and the NRL prelim finals decided. In the AFL, they'll both be in Perth, so there will be no games in Melbourne. And the same goes in Sydney. There will be no prelim finals in Sydney, with Brisbane and Melbourne hosting both of those finals. So stay tuned for that. That's exactly why the Storm will be playing at Amy Park, the noise and the fervour that 30,000 Storm fans will be providing. A quick point of thanks to everyone who's been involved, supported the podcast over 100 episodes. Thank you to James, who's now editing every episode and cleaning up some of the glitches that I sometimes provide from an audio point of view. Thank you very much to Meg, who's working behind the scenes in keeping everything up running from a Sports Geek point of view, and is my assistant and makes sure that my calendar is clear enough to continue to do interviews. Also, big thank you to all of my guests, 125 and counting. Thank you very much for your time and giving up your time for conversations. I'm really humbled and privileged to be able to speak to people around the world, in the US, in the UK, in the New Zealand. I might start calling it that. In New Zealand, with guys like Shane Harmon and the like. So yeah, really thankful to have the guests, and also super thankful for the support that I get via iTunes. We're at 85 reviews globally. Thank you very much for sending them in. If you haven't left a review, I know iTunes reviews are super hard to leave. You've got to go to your desktop, you've got to find Sports Geek Podcast by typing it in, and then you've got to leave a review. I really wish iTunes would make it easier for people to do it, make it easier on the mobile, those kind of things. So for the people who have made that extra effort to do that, I'm very much appreciative of that. And I think when I was asking James to put together some clips of how I feel about reaching episode 100, I think the best way that I think I could explain it is that I'm very happy. Very happy to welcome. Very happy to welcome. Very happy Alex. Very happy to. Very happy to welcome. Very happy to be. Very happy to introduce. Very happy to be up in Sydney. Done a recent workshop. And very much so. I didn't realise I was doing the very happy too. A few people had pointed that out to me in the way that I intro every single guest, but I am very happy to have all of those people on as guests. So thank you very much. I would not have got to 100 episodes without your support and without those interviews, because I don't think people are going to be listening to, over 80 hours of me talking about stuff. So please, if you can, send in your reviews or share it on social. Simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/SGP if you're looking to share the URL and tell people about the podcast. Stay tuned for episode 2 of my episode 100. It will be episode 101, but that's okay. It's going to be a double episode in this case, where I'm going to catch up with Tom Halls from British Tennis and talk a little bit about his role at British Tennis, some of his recaps and insights from seat, because we have got Australia and Great Britain going up against each other this weekend with the Davis Cup. So until next week, until next episode, or until the very next episode, episode 101, which is going to come at you right away with Tom Halls. My name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek. Please send me a tweet at Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek, or you can try the old-fashioned way and just send me an email to tell me that you listen. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Like the Sports Geek Podcast? Find us on facebook.com/sportsgeek. Check out which teams work with Sports Geek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes.